Hey guys, Will or Lolio here, and today I'm showing you another dungeon in Warlords of Draenor. This time it's Skyreach, the Arakkoa dungeon. For testing purposes, everyone here is scaled to level 100 with an item level of 570. The first thing I'll say is that visually it's a stunning dungeon. Fighting an all-new Arakkoa architecture above the spires of Iraq, I think that's pretty awesome. Their art style resembles a mix of Blood Elf and Mantid, which I think is very fitting, because they give off both a majestic, regal vibe, much like the Blood Elves, because these are the Arakkoa before they were cursed and corrupted, so you see them at the peak of their society. But they still have this air of sinister intentions, so the mix of Blood Elf and Mantid looking stuff fits very well. The new Arakkoa model is also in this build, and I think it looks great. My only complaint is that they're not playable. Hopefully one day we'll have playable Arakkoa. In terms of difficulty, after running this dungeon, I'll say that it's not too hard, considerably easier than Shadowmoon Burial Grounds, which is notoriously overtuned, but more challenging than Bloodmaw Slag Mines. Of course, this is beta and tuning isn't final, but that's how it is currently. The initial trash pulls are fairly easy, but I believe some of the mobs have a disorient, which could be a problem on harder difficulties. The most important mob to watch out for is the Skyreach Overlord. He pulls with 3 lowborn Arakkoa. The Overlord hits fairly hard himself, but he uses an ability called Torn Feathers, which buffs the lowborn Arakkoa adds so they inflict 100% more damage and gain 100% haste, while also removing and making them immune to all CC. When this happened, the pull went from manageable to a wipe very quickly, and Torn Feathers seemed to be an instant effect, so we couldn't interrupt it. I'd recommend using a big defensive cooldown here, if you can't burst down the Overlord before he buffs the others. The first boss is basically the Beyblade boss. Currently, the only real mechanic to speak of is moving out of the big, flashy spinning blades. It's definitely slightly bugged, and appeared to be missing some of his abilities from the dungeon journal. This made the fight feel a bit undertuned. I also think he could use some more health, as he died pretty quickly. The next Ready for Raiding achievement comes from avoiding a lot of his abilities on Heroic, so it definitely seems like a don't stand and stuff kind of boss. Visually, it's really unique and vibrant, one of the most interesting looking dungeon fights in a while, and I think when this fight is fixed up, it'll be really fun on Heroic. The trash right after him is a little bit odd. There's a couple of packs of Arakkoa, as well as a Dread Raven. I pulled the Raven and one of the side packs, and things seemed to go well for a little bit. There's a healer mob in this group, called the Herald of Sunrise. It can't be interrupted, but you can stun him. The weird thing here was that I was seemingly knocked off the platform by being thrown over the pack and off the side. I'm not sure which mob did that, but I assume it's the Dread Raven, because he does have a knockback as well, but that seemed to be separate from what threw me off. In any case, be careful with these packs. I'd recommend pulling them down the stairs instead of tanking them on the little narrow walkway. The second boss is a big golem, resembling the anima golems like Dark Animus. He's extremely simple mechanically, but there are a couple of things to watch out for. First is his ability called Burst. This is an AoE pulse that hits everybody, so healers need to be ready for it. Every burst gives him a stacking buff that increases his damage, acting as kind of a soft enrage timer. Not only does the boss have a lot of health, but there's another mechanic that's designed entirely to slow you down. A beam of light will come down and connect one of the other golems around the room to the boss. If the beam touches him, he'll be healed every second. The way to deal with this is simply have someone stand on the beam, but this will cause them to take a little bit of damage, around 10k damage per tick, so healers will also have to watch them. On my group's first attempt, we soaked most of the beams, but eventually we wiped due to the high burst stack. It's important that every beam gets intercepted, or the stacks will get too high and you'll end up wiping anyway. Overall, this fight was okay, but it seemed a little bit bland, mainly due to the smash ability, which is seemingly a tank effect, having basically no impact. After the second boss, there's a few trash packs of birds, but they didn't seem to do anything noticeable. It felt like a little break where you didn't have to worry about much. The third boss, a large Dread Raven, appeared to be quite bugged. As a tank, he's mechanically simple because it's a stationary fight. He just flies up next to the platform, kinda like Ultraxion or Ragewing from the new Blackrock Spire. In this video I'm taking a lot of damage because his main tank ability, called Piercing Armor, is a debuff that will only hit you if you're not using active mitigation. Because Guardian Druids are incredibly OP on the beta right now, I hadn't needed to use any active mitigation anywhere else, and even here I wasn't getting incredibly low. But in general, any good tank is always going to be using their active mitigation, and so it's not really a big issue. The main mechanic for everyone else on this boss is called Solar Flare, and it seemed pretty bugged. Essentially, these little phoenix ads spawn, and they move towards players. They're supposed to blow up and do an AoE pulse if they hit someone or reach 1 health, but they seem to be stationary most of the time. This is another one of those fights that I think will be fun on Heroic after the bugs are fixed, but right now it's a bit off. The next part of the dungeon involves running through some type of wind maze thing, kinda like Throne of Thunder, which was actually really difficult to get through without a speed boost, and nearly everyone fell off at some point. Right now, the wind doesn't deactivate even when you kill the trash after it, which is odd considering it makes the run back a lot more annoying. The trash before the last boss, again, didn't seem to do much interesting. The last boss, however, is definitely the most difficult part of the dungeon, and is likely to give a lot of groups trouble. The first mechanic you should know is called Cast Down. This spawns a Solar Zealot, an ad that will pick up a player and attempt to throw them off the side, much like the Valkyr from Lich King. It's obviously important to switch DPS immediately to these, to avoid losing people. The ads can be stunned, slowed, gripped, a lot of CC works on them, so use that to your advantage, and depending on your composition, they shouldn't be too hard to handle. Their health pools are pretty high though, around 10% of the boss's HP, so you'll likely need more than one person to switch over. The next mechanic is called Lens Flare. The boss will aim a stun laser beam at the player, and wherever they move for the duration of the debuff, they'll leave fire on the ground. Try to plan out your path so you're not putting it right on top of your group, and leave room for others to drop their fire. It seemed to last for the entire duration of the fight, so the room can definitely fill up quickly if you're not careful with the placement. The last major ability to look out for is Shielding. You might not notice this on the boss, but he'll bring out a Golem ad that will reduce the boss's damage taken by 99%, so it needs to be killed before you can DPS the boss again. The Zealots are a much higher priority than the Constructs, because they don't do much damage overall. I'd say this boss was slightly overtuned for a normal mode dungeon, but I think the final boss should be a bit harder than the rest of the dungeon. As for the dungeon itself, I love the visuals, I love the lore behind Arakkoa, and the mechanics are fairly engaging. It's always difficult to judge a dungeon from normal mode beta testing, so I can't wait to try it out on heroic and challenge mode. Anyway, that's all from me for now. If you enjoyed the video or found it informative, please leave a like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.